The BBC's star newsreader announced his resignation from the broadcaster yesterday, 9 months after he was suspended following allegations that he paid an unnamed person thousands of pounds for explicit pictures. The parents of the person in question have now spoken to The Sun this morning, saying, "This isn't the end for us. We've been suffering immensely for nearly a year. We still have so many questions and need the BBC to answer them." However, reports in today's newspapers suggest that the internal BBC investigation into Huw Edwards has been shared with the star himself, but the outcome is unlikely to be made public. The BBC also told us yesterday that they will not comment on internal processes, despite the investigation and Huw Edwards' £430,000 a year salary being funded by you and me, the licence fee payer. So tonight, I'm asking, as the devastated parents of the person involved in the Huw Edwards scandal say they fear the episode will be swept under the rug should the BBC make its investigation public. Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GBNews, and whilst you're there voting our poll, the results will come very, very shortly. But first, going head-to-head on this are PR expert and talent manager Jonathan Shalit and former UKIP leader Henry Bolton. Good evening to you both. Henry, does the Beeb need to be more transparent about this Huw Edwards affair and get this investigation into the public domain?
I think, Tom, yes, Ben, sorry.
Ben.
I don't know what. The answer is yes. Not the investigation, not the details of the evidence, not the submissions that have been made by various people, but the findings, yes. Because the BBC has a responsibility as the national news or broadcaster, if you like, funded by from the public themselves, has a responsibility to demonstrate not only that they have integrity, which is already obviously highly questionable, but that they are doing everything they can to maintain it. In this particular case, I'm afraid it feels as though they are looking after Huw Edwards, and it has to be said that the police investigation found no criminal action at all had taken place. No criminal offences had taken place, and it's destroyed Huw's career. It's obviously caused personal problems for all sorts of other people. We don't really know exactly who, but the answer is yes. The findings should be made public because this is an organisation that survives, that exists because of public confidence within it, and because it is funded by the public, and the public have every right to know that a star presenter of that organisation has, when allegations are made, is going to be submitted to a proper investigation, and the findings are going to be robust.
All right. Jonathan, of course, no criminality has been found by the police. 2 police forces investigated it, the Met and the Welsh Police, but there were complaints from junior staff members at the BBC about Huw Edwards, on top of the allegations that he paid £35,000 for explicit pictures from a person.
Individuals, just because they work for public organisations, are also entitled to privacy. What I think is key here, from what we know, and of course from what we all know externally, is, as Henry just said, the police investigated, following what The Sun wrote. The police found no criminal suggestion to take any further, so that's very clear, no criminality. What also seems very clear, it all took place in the privacy of Huw's home. It took place on his own personal equipment in his own personal time. I don't think it can be expected that if an employee of an organisation, publicly taxpayer funded or not, has activities in their own private time within the law, that it's not for the employer to be publicising inquiries into them. If this had taken place on BBC property or with BBC equipment, that'd be a whole different conversation. But this is his private time on private equipment in his private home. So I don't see why. Well,
Jonathan,
made public.
Huw Edwards has been off before resigning yesterday. He was off for 9 months, getting paid 35 grand a month still. He was signed off sick. And the investigation that the BBC have carried out was funded by licence fee payers. So do you not agree there should be an element of transparency on that front?
So I think the BBC have been transparent in saying what they've done. People don't like them. People don't like what they've done. But the Director General of the BBC also has a responsibility to the employees of the BBC. If Huw Edwards is off on medical grounds for a long period of time, that also has to be respected. I mean, people have a right to be protected as well. And he's become very unwell, as it appears, on medical grounds. That it's not for us to question that. We're not doctors. If people have worked for an organisation for a long time, there are very clear laws in this country that you are kept on salaries and you are protected and looked after your employer. I don't think the question is about the BBC investigation. It's a bigger issue of how companies treat employees, and employees are entitled to privacy. It still remains Huw Edwards did not break the law, and the police haven't charged him or investigated him. So it took place in his own home. It's like you. If you got up to mischief, Leo.
Not me, Jonathan. I said last night, I'm vanilla. No skeletons in my closet. Bring it on.
Let's say someone else at GBNews gets up to indiscretion in the privacy of their own home, away from the office. It's not the business of GBNews.
Yeah, but Jonathan, we're not funded by the licence fee payers. GBNews is a private company. We're not funded by. I've seen this argument online. We are not. The BBC are funded millions and millions and millions of pounds. Huw Edwards was on £430,000 a year. Yes, no criminality. Fine. It's a question of morals, though. Henry Bolton.
Yeah, look, I agree. I hate witch hunts. I despise them. There are so many cases of politicians, particularly, but also some celebrities who have been pursued and whose private lives have been ripped apart by the media, by organisations, including the BBC. And, so I despise that sort of behaviour. But the BBC must tread a very difficult path. It has its own integrity to think of. It has the integrity of an organisation, or it needs to look after the integrity of an organisation that is funded from the public purse and has a reputation to uphold. It is already failing to do that. I'm not saying that they should divulge all sorts of personal details.
No.
But they do have a responsibility to tell the British people who fund them whether or not one of their star presenters has actually committed something that they feel is such a misdemeanor that he needs to resign or be sacked. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the least that can be done. It's the rest of it, in a sense, is mistakes and errors and tragedy, nothing illegal.
Okay.
And lives have been wrecked. But there is an integrity issue that's broader than just Huw. Okay. And he should have recognised that as well. Fascinating
debate, Jonathan Shalit. Great points. I just think at the very least we should know about the complaints made by the BBC staff against Huw Edwards. I mean, that's a good enough reason to make some of the investigation public. Henry Bolton, Jonathan Shalit, thank you very much for your contributions.